what did that show that maybe you didn't see him make it out of it?
Obviously, I thought the guys played hard. I think it starts there. I don't think it was a lack of effort, certainly from an execution standpoint. You guys know how much we've talked about just the discipline of the pre-snap and, certainly coming out in that second quarter, I think there was 5 penalties and 13 plays and just continually felt like we were behind the sticks. That's the frustrating part about that. I think, the amount of times we beat ourselves in that game, certainly something we got to clean up.
Do you think the problems on the offensive line, are those fixable problems? Were they communication problems? How did you see that?
Absolutely. I just think, a lot of it just came down to one-on-one battles, and I think we maybe came into the game and put a lot of emphasis on protecting those edges and those pass rushers. There were some things in the interior side that hurt us as well. And so, again, I thought we ran the ball well at times during the game, and I think that's a huge plus. Certainly, from a protection standpoint, we know what we got to do to take the next step there. And it starts again with me. I felt I got, not as aggressive as we should have been to keep them off balance, and obviously I got to do a better job there.
You mentioned that the run game was working pretty well at times. What's sort of the disconnect between being able to open up holes but not being able to protect the quarterback?
Yeah, I think certainly at times you're always going to have certain guys that are better at run game blocking versus the pass game, all those kind of things. But I think a lot of that has to do too with mixing it, and certainly from my standpoint, the reflection of keeping them off balance. I think we got predictable when we were throwing the ball, and obviously in those situations didn't have a ton of time to do so. So again, I think the good thing about this program, the good thing about this culture, I really don't feel like there's a lot of pointing fingers going on. Everybody came back to work on Monday looking at themselves. Certainly from a staff standpoint, our players, what do we got to do better to do our 111 to play as well as we can play?
Coach, we've already said a few times the plan early was not to get the ball on the perimeter, and obviously we have number one jet sweep. Did you go off script there, or was that just the wrong read from Brock? How does that happen, I guess?
Yeah, it ended up being a check play, and so that was our check, was to get to the perimeter. Again, we thought, looking back at it, we probably should have kept that one in the 2nd-1 situation. We're reading the field defensive end. Look, we're going to make mistakes, and obviously that's one we would like to have back, but overall, again, just did not stick to the plan as what we needed to get done, obviously.
It's still early for Brock. He's only started 2 games. So what do you do to make sure that his confidence doesn't get shot after a game like that?
Yeah, he's a tough and resilient kid, so he's been through it in his own way. Again, whether he's been the starter or not the starter, he's been going through the highs and lows, and so we have full confidence he'll bounce back. Again, I always think it comes down to getting him in rhythm early, getting him an easy completion. So I think everything we're trying to do with this game plan moving forward is to get some confidence back there, get the ball out of his hands, complement it with a good run game. Nothing. These aren't like drastic turns here. Nothing. That we're looking at where we're saying we got to, do something out of what we've been training to do. We just got to focus, execute, and do a better job all around.
There's been a lot of talk about the helmet communication. Was there any problems with that during the game, or how was that?
No, I don't think so. Again, I think we've talked about it, just, the difference between being in a practice setting, and we're doing a better job now of not giving ourselves a ton of time, if you will, in practice, and getting lazy with that, just because, once the 40-second clock hits, you get the call in. There's only about 7-8 seconds to give the information you need to give, and but for the most part, no issues there.
Brock should be pretty familiar with the team he's going up against, the defense he's going up against. Has he provided any additional insight that you can't see on film? And do you think there'll be any comfortability knowing the task at hand?
I think so. I know one of their better players, the defensive end on the left side, was his roommate, and so I'm sure there's a ton of stuff like that for him. Again, he's got to go through the process. It's got to be an experience for him that he enjoys. With that being said, he knows it's another SEC game. From the standpoint of providing information, certainly it's always nice to have somebody who's been in a program and know the details about the players. But nowadays, you have the film and you got a pretty good feel of who you're going up against.
What do you see from that?
Solid all around. Those again. I give a lot of props to South Carolina and how they played. That was a physical group that really played extremely well against us, and And similar to that group, this is a similar group that you've been watching them play for 2-3 years. I think defensive line has been starting for a long time. It's a solid linebacker core that's played a lot of football. I think the safety 24 is one of the better players in the country. And so, again, this is an experienced group, will be another really good challenge for us. And again, the focus is about us Saturday, getting what we need to get done.
You talked about the offensive line losing those one-on-one battles against South Carolina. So how do they win those battles against Georgia?
I think it's every day. It's getting better. You guys know the season is not a final assessment after week 2. It's us getting back to work. It's getting the reps. Certainly what we got to do to build the depth and continue to work those things in practice. So, and it's one-on-one battles across the board. We may say O-line here, but tight ends, receivers. Everybody has a job to do, a role to do, and I think the thing we're always striving for from a staff standpoint, from a player standpoint, is who's getting better week to week.
But one of the things that Mark mentioned after the game that he wished he could have over was the 4th down call. We ended up making a 2-possession game after they ended up kicking a field goal. How much lobbying do you get to do on that part in terms of going for it versus punting?
I think every coordinator wants to go for it on every 4th down, so I know that's the kind of guy he is to put blame on it, and he's put his blame on that for probably the last 48 hours. At the end of the day, in a 4th and 1 situation, we got to go execute. I think that could have been a play that could have happened the other way and got us a lot of momentum. So, again, I'm right there. I appreciate how aggressive he was. Obviously, again, every coordinator wants to be in those situations on a 4th down, a critical 4th down that can change the game. And that's just one of those we look back at that we got to go execute and get done.
Well, I know last season, Boise State, you guys ranked number 2 in the country in 4th down conversion percentage. Is there any kind of, we'll call it special sauce, but is there anything other than execution that goes into converting that?
I don't think so. I think it just, it comes down to the mentality we got to develop and have in those situations. Certainly, 4th and 1 there, running the quarterback sneak play, we got to get a yard. So some of it comes down to the mentality we got to establish, we got to get going. We understand that, and certainly we look back at that as add that to another thing that needed to go right.
You mentioned the safety earlier. What is it? Kind of challenges it for you and also for Brock, for a guy who he seems like he can be all over the field all at once.
Say that one more time.
For the safety, when he can just line up in so many different spots.
Yeah, he's a super instinctual player. I know they've used him at the nickel position at times when they've been down there. He's just one of those guys, man. Good football players are good football players. It doesn't matter what level you're at. You watch the film, he has made plays at multiple positions on that defense over the course of the last 2 years. He's just a guy, certainly when you're talking about safeties, being at the back end 12 to 15 yards away from the ball, you better know where he is on every snap.
Jimmy told us Saturday night that the number one thing on his to-do list was just to get some treatment, get his body right.
Who said that? I'm sorry.
Demi.
Yeah.
How have you seen him respond just physically this week after carrying the ball so many times on Saturday?
Yeah, I think he's been tremendous. Again, since I've been here, he's a guy that, when Chip went down, had a huge role. And I think one thing you can take away from that game is how hard he ran. It's a guy that the lights weren't too bright. I thought he stepped in there and played extremely tough. He's back out here on the first day of practice going 100 miles an hour. So I think that's, speaks volumes about him. He's everything you want from a toughness standpoint. And we just got to keep building on guys like that.
As a coach, after a game like this, how do you balance, do you need to change things against sticking with what you believe in before the game?
Yeah,
and not getting too rattled by the performance like that?
That's a great question. I mean, I think you certainly go into every season, right, thinking one thing, and you get into a conference game and some things certainly stick out to you, and so it shifts a little bit of what spring ball looks like and maybe what that first week looks like, and now you got to adjust, and that's obviously what we're here to do, is figure out what we got to do to win football games. Obviously there will be some adjustments made after last week, and again, that's something that there's always good energy, right? That's what makes you better, is weeks like that, and that's what we're looking forward to for Saturday.
A quarterback like Brock, who obviously needs reps, just experience, how do you balance that with using some of the wildcat stuff with Gavin and hitting him?
Yeah, there's never any perfect, scenarios there. The reality of our situation is right now at running back, we've talked about this. We really think Gavin got in there and provided a lot in the time he got in. I thought he made 2-3 good runs, explosive runs, and so for the most part, we'd love to have the two of them out there so we don't get Brock out of rhythm. that's certainly the plan. But again, we just with the current situation right now, with what you're looking at, with Demi taking most of the reps and freshmen as the backups who haven't played, Gavin's a guy that's rushed for over 100 yards versus very good teams in the Big Ten, and we got to utilize that.
Bush, Saturday was the
last
first time in Barry Allen's career he didn't catch a pass in the game. How have you seen him respond since then?
He's been good, and again, that's on me. I mean, you look at it from the standpoint of him being one of our playmakers. Again, I've been impressed with his attitude throughout the offseason, through where he's at. He's come back here ready to go back to work. Again, there's no excuse for that. We've got to find ways to get him the football, to protect it, to push it down the field, and again, we're aware of that. So.
Okay, folks, thank you very much.